Right, okay, this is the point at which I stopped the last video comparing the 150 and 130 brake horsepower maps, and this is the torque map. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at the smoke map, or the IQ limited by the MAF, mass airflow meter. So I'm going to have a look at that one next. So I've just clicked on there and I'm going to find it in the other file. There we are, so there it is there. So there are the two maps. I can just about get it to fit on the page, just about get that one to fit on the page or the screen, so I can see them both now. And again, it would be interesting to know which bits are similar and which bits are not, so I'm going to just have a brief look across the top here. That looks like revs per minute, doesn't it? They're not exactly the same, are they? Look, 861, 924, 861, 1000, 1100. So they're not quite the same on that axis there. I doubt it's relevant, but they're not quite the same. Now let's have a look at what we've got here for the airflow. And again, the airflows don't quite match either. We've allowed for, or the designers have allowed for, a slightly higher airflow here. So it's got slightly different revs per minute axis and a slightly higher airflow. Now, I don't know how important that is at the moment, but what I'll do is just to double check that that's exactly what I am seeing. I'm going to highlight that and copy it, and then delete that, and then I'm going to go up and I'm going to put that onto the Passat map. So I'm going to paste that onto there and press delete, and sure enough you can see that these earlier figures up to 650 are the same, but 750, 850, 925 and so on, they've been increased slightly in this file compared to those original figures. Right, I'll do the same with the revs per minute, although I suspect that this is not really that relevant, but I want them to match anyway, so I will do the same thing so that I can see what's going on. So I'll paste that one in there. I'll just delete that. And you can see that these figures are now up there, and there's very, very slight differences, not a great deal, but a little bit of a difference. At the beginning here it's the same, 861 were the same, and by the time it gets to the end at 5355 they were the same, but they're very slightly different in the middle. Now of course the bit that we're interested in is the fueling. What's the fueling doing in comparison to the airflow, which of course is this scale here. Now again, we could compare it, as I've said, with using the Winnow's comparator, but I think as we've got it right in front of us like this, it's just as easy to say copy, and then I'll paste it in there. Right, now what we've got then is we've got some slight increases here, which are probably not that relevant because they are probably, they're only really occurring at low values of injection quantity, but airflow, low values of airflow and low revs per minute, so they're probably not that important. Then we've got some reduced values in the middle here, which may well not be reduced. I mean, compared to this one, they may not be that much difference, because remember the axes have shifted very slightly. So these figures might be the same as those figures. So again, it might not be that important. And then we've got some slight increases here, and if we compare those with those, we know we've got an axis shift. So it's possible that these are irrelevant as well. It's possible that these have not changed a great deal. Because if you ever wanted to play with the map from a 130 to convert it to a 150, you would have to change the torque limit, which we just changed for the fun of it really, and now we're looking at the IQ as restricted or limited by airflow. That was another factor that would have to be changed. So it's not unreasonable to assume that we would want to change this if we were changing this map for a remap, which of course we're not, we're just comparing changes at the moment. And the interesting thing here is looking at the values. We are almost hitting 60. 59.5, in fact we're hitting 60 there. So this is a significant increase in that sense, because the number of milligrams before we know was still around about 50, 52, that sort of area. We're now being allowed about 60. So this MAF map will allow us to fuel up to 60 milligrams. The torque limiter is not going to allow that, so that's going to restrict it back to maybe 56, 57. But that's still considerably higher than the 50, 52, that sort of area that we had before on the original 130. So maybe this would be a significant difference or a significant change. Now we would have to look at other maps to go with this map. In particular, we have to look at the boost map, because these airflow figures are not magic. They didn't come from nowhere. The only reason we've got higher airflow figures on this map compared to the original is because something must have happened on the boost map on the 150. So the next thing I'm going to need to do is to go and look at the 150. Now before I do that, I'll just save this and it can go in with my other versions, so I'm keeping them all in together. Right, I'll stop there and come back on another video at a later date.